Welcome, folks. We're here to present today for open space and recreation projects. Welcome anyone who is watching this at home or from the general public. We are going to start by giving a brief overview of CPA in Holyoke, and then we're going to jump into hearing our applicants present to us. We'll end each 6 or 7 minute presentation of theirs with a brief section of Q&A. Anyone from the public who wants to weigh in can contact me just privately. You can PM me and I'll know that you want to speak. You can also send me comments if you want me to just voice them out loud, right? I can say, oh, X from this person is saying the following. All right. I'm going to start by giving a brief presentation on CPA. Committee. So this is the second time you're seeing this. There's one slide that's different, which I think you'll actually appreciate because I actually have some really solid budget information for us today. Yes. Okay, so CPA across the Commonwealth. There are 194 CPA communities across our Commonwealth. 70% of Massachusetts citizens live in a CPA community. The CPA Trust Fund is funded by all citizens through their transactions at the Registry of Deeds. The state legislature has also voted several times to add additional surplus funding to the trust fund because the state match has varied over the years. So if you look at this slide, you can see that when it initially started, there were only 34 communities that were CPA communities receiving distribution. And so with the amount that they had in the trust fund, they could match 100%, right, what a community put in. But as the number of communities quickly jumped, right, to 102 just within 5 years, and now almost to 200 now, that has really varied over time. So the amounts that we've seen since we joined, which were very similar to what it had been for quite some time, were sort of in the 20s, right? And sometimes in the upper teens. Last year was sort of a watershed year. We had a 43.84% match. That was largely due to some additional federal funding that came in, I think, that trickled to states and then states down related to kind of the COVID recovery funding. This year's match is 38.51%, which is still the second highest amount that we've seen in 10 years. So we're still sort of riding out kind of an increased state match right now, partly because they're not just using the trust fund, they're using also like millions and millions of dollars that they're adding towards it in state surplus funds. All right, so community tax levy. We are a 1.5% surcharge community. If you have been getting your tax bills recently, like I have been getting them, you can see up in the upper right-hand corner what your CPA surcharge is. And that means that 1.5% is levied on top of your property tax. And that is what it creates our additional funding that our community is putting forward. That's what the state is matching, is that money. Some communities have opted into the highest level possible, which is 3%. If you are at 2 or 3%, you actually increase your local tax levy and you also get access to the greater state match, as well as additional rounds of funding, which we don't currently have access to. We're at 1.5%, which is about average, right? There's a lot of 1.5% in some 1% communities. Although, of course, some communities are taking in much more property tax revenue than a small city like Holyoke is. All right, automatic exemptions. Holyoke has an automatic exemption on the first $100,000 of your property value. With this automatic exemption, the average single family contribution this year would have been $66.48, and the local tax levy would have been nearly doubled, right? Which would have increased our budget to about $1.5 million. Instead, because we only levy past the first 100,000, the budget that we'll have this year is around 802,000. Okay, average cost of taxpayers. In 2022, the average value of a single home was $219,470, and the average single family home paid $34.51 to the CPA fund. In 2023, this year, with the average single family property value going up, right now $236,262. You know, a lot of folks have been talking about how homes have been reassessed. That has caused the property taxes to go up. It also, as a result, has caused your CPA surcharge to go up. And it has gone up to $38.34. So it's gone up by a little bit less than $4 for your average single family property towards the CPA fund. Okay, 223 budget. Because this average single family home will pay $38.34 towards CPA fund. The total raised by our community is estimated to be a little over $500,000 this year. The state match is 38.51%. The total given to us by the state was thus $219,810. And that means our overall budget this year is $802,642. You're going to see a number that's a little bit different in a minute, and I'll explain why. Okay, 10% must be spent in each category each year, or you have to save that 10% towards that category in the future. There are no housing applicants this year. That means that 10% of the funding from this year will be reserved into the housing category and can be used in the future. Up to 5% can be used to cover administrative costs. Okay, so this is a new slide that the committee has not seen before. So this is our formal FY23 budget. We have, for this fiscal year, $802,642 from the tax levy plus the state match. Then you add about $201,000 to that from our fund balance, right? We tend to be a little conservative in how we put forward projects. We tend not to spend down to the last nickel. And that means that generally we have a revolving fund of things that are moving forward, right, from previous years. Sometimes also this is from awards that are underspent, and then those remaining balances come back to us. So if you add those two numbers together, we have just over $1 million this year. However, you can remove up to 5%, which is $40,000 and change for the admin budget. And then you remove a little bit over $80,000 because there's 10% we cannot spend this year because we don't have any housing applications. And I do want to highlight that the $40,000 that is for the admin budget, we have never spent up to our admin budget. We've spent close to it, but we've never spent the full amount. And similarly to like if an award is underspent, any underspent admin funding then gets rolled into the fund balance and is used the next year on projects. So this year we'll have $883,541.27 for historic and open space and rec projects. So committee, if you want to write that number down, that will be sort of your golden rule for like what can we actually suggest funding for to city council. It's up to that amount. Okay, what have we accomplished over the past 5 years? So this is the Holyoke Projects map, which you can find on our website. It is an interactive map, and I will encourage you to go to it. Each of these is actually an interactive radio dial. You can click it, and it will actually bring you to a description of that project. How much did it cost? What did we do? There's photographs, there's videos, and you can see they're color-coded by category. We have funded at this point a project in every ward in the city. This is a list of the projects that we have funded for historic preservation. They range from the City Hall stained glass windows to the restoration of Smith's Ferry Cemetery stones. Some really small projects, like we restored the annex lanterns that were $500, all the way up to $130,000 so that we could restore an historic fire truck for the fire department, right? We also did the War Memorial exterior restoration that would preserve that stone. And we are looking forward to continuing to work with Asteria Hearst over time, right? We've done their electrical work. Now we've also moved forward with repainting and supporting some exterior repairs. So you'll see there's a really large range of the types of historic projects that we're putting forward. It's as simple as the buildings, but it's also beyond buildings, right? It's carousel horses, it's gravestones, it is murals, right? There's a lot of different projects. Statues, right? Lady Liberty. Open space and recreation. I did break these out by 2 different categories, though they're funded out of the same category. Open space, we acquired land up in Gloutak Woods and then actually worked with our conservation department to have it developed into trails. And then, of course, the multi-year project coming forward on Scott's Tower. And that means working to acquire land north of the tower, and then to support with the initial planning, and hopefully in the years to come, other work as well, moving towards a full restoration and reusability of that area. Recreation, we have the Boys and Girls Club Playground, the Mayor Field Playground and Field Improvements, the Community Field Toddler Playground Fence, the plaque from Miriam Miranda at Ely Field, and the Miracle League Fully Accessible Playground, which is going to go in next to the Kennedy Park Playground. this spring, which will be really exciting. All right, affordable housing. We've had 3 projects. $50,000 towards 337 Chestnut Street, which is a Valley Opportunity Council building. $120,000 in support of 2 new houses that went up as homeowner housing for Habitat for Humanity on Jackson Street, and $250,000 towards the Wayfinder Library Commons 2 building. That is the second project after Wayfinders 1, which went across from the library. The Commons 2 is their second phase and brings online even more buildings in that area that were really blighted, and sort of bringing them back online, making them usable, and really nice places to live. That $250,000 was part of a massive millions upon millions of dollars worth of work. And that money, which was matched, I believe, by the city council, is what allowed us to get access as a city to federal and state funding, right? That was our way of matching enough of the total cost that we would have access to millions of dollars worth of other funding. Here are the totals by category. 37% has gone towards historic preservation, 47% has gone towards open space and recreation, and 16% has gone towards affordable housing, for a total of $2.7 million over the past 5 years. Here's the rubric that we're going to be scoring all projects on. So you'll see that the committee takes its job seriously to review applications, to ask good questions, and then to score them based on this criteria on goals alignment, benefit to the city, public support, supporting documentation, project feasibility, sources of funding, and restrictions and contractual processes. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Okay, thank you everybody for letting me go through that. We're gonna start now by hearing from our open space and rec applicants. Yes, Mary Moriarty.
Can I just ask, can the person from Holyoke, City of Holyoke, identify themselves? There's 2, there's Holyoke Media and there's City of Holyoke, so I figure that's a person. So for the sake of the attendance, can that person please identify themselves? Okay.
Amy is not here, and I'm actually wondering if that is Amy, but she's having technical issues. That's
okay. All right.
The other piece of
does my name show? Or
it is
me?
me,
Yes.
but I just have my video off. That's me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm trying to respond to emails from people who are trying to join the meeting.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Amy, who is first in terms of presentations tonight?
It'll just take a moment. Let me see if I can find that. Let's see. Okay, it goes the YMCA, and actually that person is just trying to join right now, and I'm trying to send her that right now, and then it's Jones Point Park after that, Anniversary Hill, and then Gloutak Woods. Okay.
Well, let's move to Jones Point Park, and then when that person arrives, then they can go second. That's fine. I understand Zoom things happen. All right, Tom Reynolds, do you want to introduce yourself and jump into your presentation?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. My name is Tom Reynolds. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation Department in the wonderful city of Holyoke. About 7 months into the new role here, going on to 8 months. Time's flying by, and this was the first round of CPA for me. I'm excited to do this. I first want to say thank you for everyone for being here, who's watching along, asking questions, and thank you for the CPC for doing this. As I did this application, I don't know how many multiple times you guys do this, but yeah, thank you guys for doing all that. You know, this is a pretty good thing that we have here for the city. Excited to be able to use hopefully some of it. So thank you again for everything you guys do on your end. So I'll just go right into it. We're this go around the cycle is we're requesting funding for the design of a master plan for Jones Point Park, which lies down in Ward 7 in Cleveland and Oxford Streets. It's a pretty unique park. It's pretty good size. I think it's one of our bigger ones in terms of square acreage, about 24 and a half plot of land that lies there. We have a couple fields. We have a 75-foot baseball field, a little playground. We got some new tennis courts just put in about 2017, 2018. We've got a soccer field and a basketball court there. So it lies along the riverside for some stretch there. So, it's unique, and we kind of wanted to add some new stuff to that, or at least start to kind of think of in our future plans what we could do to increase, the usage and the more efficient usage of that space there at Jones Point. So we figured that the best way to actually do this would be going through a master plan and having some outside counsel kind of, do what their profession is. And then the best part of it is it engages. We have community meetings. Excuse me, I'm sorry. That would help get that community engagement and really see what that neighborhood and what the park goers that use that park, what would really be needed or wanted in terms of that. And we can go back and forth a few times and kind of really come up with a layout or a template of what we can do to put into that park going forward for future. We have one down at Springdale already that we're using as kind of the template, and we're kind of checking off bits and pieces as we go, and try to increase the park, what it looks like from the street, the functionality, the use. Are we maximizing that little area park that we have there? Or a bunch of questions that we've been asking, what we can do to, go forward with making that a better place and have more options for us to use. I didn't want to go in and say we wanted a playground if a playground wasn't needed there in that area. So like I said, we can get the community input, which is a huge part of this that I like for the master plan here. And going forward, it's just not us dictating what we want put in there, because ultimately it's the neighborhood and the park goers that are going to use this park, and we want them to be happy with as much as we possibly can, right? There's a ceiling, but we want the enjoyment of all community members to be had by all. So I'll just go right down the checklist here. The budget, we got about, it was a quote for about $25,000 for the conceptual design, the whole meetings, the public outreach, and the final design. So after we go back and forth with, what the community wants, what we can put in there, stuff like that, we put an additional $5,000 on there. It may not even be needed, but there's some additional testing that once they start maybe going in there and seeing that there's a sewage overflow for chance that's actually in there that runs along the east side of the park along the railroad track. So I don't know how much digging we could do on that side, but maybe into the wood side, we have more options to do more stuff, whether it's a new set of courts of some sort, or it's more grass field, it's trails and stuff like that. They would do the, if there's, environmental assessments, the detailed design and engineering of anything, special structures, whether, like I said, it's sewer or if it's electrical or what the case may have. They'll find that all out, and then from there we'll have the best shape scenario, what we want to do, what we can do. Honestly, is the first part to start it, and from there see what we want to do as a community. Excuse me. The master plan, it won't require any funding over multiple years. It's just kind of be one-stop shop, get it done, and then we'll have it, and we'll be able to use it for as long as we really have it for, because we'll have that template with all those engineering infrastructures that we don't know about now, but once we get in there, we'll be able to figure out what we do. If awarded, the timeline, would be a couple months, depending on the meetings, when we could give enough time for the community to plan a meeting. I think the turnaround time with the company for the stuff was 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, maybe, depending on how fast they turn things over, how fast we get back and forth with the community on what our expectations are, or what our what our needs or wants are. So design will come back, we'll go to them, they'll have a conceptual design. They'll come to us, we'll plan a community meeting, we'll get some input for the community, they'll go back to them, they'll design it again, we'll do another community outreach again, kind of with mock design, and what is it a go? Is there things that we don't like? Is there something that we're not seeing on there that we would like to see? And then it would go back to them for a final design, back to us, and see if we like it, and it would be the okay. Like I said, we have one with Springdale Park, which is pretty cool. Good size property, good size thing. But what do we really want to do there? We want to be methodical and, really make sure that we're using the money the best the way we can, and not try to waste it by doing something and then having to redo it down the road because we kind of threw something together, So I really just want to plan and make sure that we're kind of doing things the right way and do it once, do it correct rather than kind of, twofold. So, the project management, the feasibility, it seems pretty straightforward. Like I said, we worked with this company SLR before. So, they were really, really happy to see if we wanted to do this again. So I think that it's super feasible in terms of what we can do there, and get them on board to get this back to us. And from there, project management, it would be us, the Parks and Rec Department, myself as a director, as well as the workers from SLR, the ward counselor, and whoever at large would like to weigh in on these meetings when we want input of that area, and the community obviously would be ultimately deciding factor what's going on. And I mean that's the most of it for me on that one. It's pretty cut and dry compared to some of the other ones that are coming behind me. So if there's any questions or anything else that you'd like me to provide information wise, just feel free.
Israel Rivera and then Michael Falsetti.
Thank you, Tom, for the presentation and for bringing the project forward again. So this is a project that was in conversation when I was actually on the commission back then. This one and Mayor Field. Fortunately, we were able to get Mayor Field done. And then the next step was to try to get Jones Point after the fact. The idea with having the parks apply through CPA is because these are parks that do not fall within the CDBG encatchment zone, meaning that we cannot invest any of our CDBG dollars into these parks. And because Parks and Recs doesn't really have a budget or DPW to upgrade the parks on a regular basis, CPA is the best avenue to actually try to do these things. When I was there, Terry was talking about starting with just a small little park like Tom had mentioned, but I like Tom's approach about getting the community together and find out what it is that they want to see done first. The only thing I think I would kind of push back on is trying to get all of it done in one shot. That would probably take a lot of money because there's a lot of different sections to that big park. Because there's a baseball diamond, there's a basketball court, there's a small little park. I would say that it would make sense for that park to be done in phases. Obviously, through the master plan, you'll find that out and you'll see what's best. But I'm glad you're applying for it. I'm glad you're going through the process. I remember playing baseball on that diamond when I was a little kid. I don't even think Youth Baseball uses it anymore because it hasn't been maintained for so long. And it would be great to be able to have that, bring that back to try to help grow the sport again within the city. Again, thank you for the application. Awesome. And the other part is we probably can't grant a lot of money. So like, I'm thinking like if just portions and phases would probably be the best bet. But I mean, I'll defer to the rest of the committee with regards to that.
Mm-hmm. Tom, and then back to Michael.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, Nick. Yeah, absolutely done in phases. There's too much there. I mean, as we know, we're going through it with, Springdale with the phase. It's just, money goes real quick these days. And we know with the rising costs of, labor and the process of everything else, definitely phases, but we want to make sure those phases kind of connect in the big puzzle for Jones Point Park sliver, right? We just kind of want like things like over one side and then work around the other way. And then like I said, the same thing with Springdale. This template gives us that layout of what we can do in phases that ultimately reaches that end goal without actually kind of, sacrificing a space. Because we obviously, 24 and a half acres, it's huge. And we just want to maximize what we have there. We have a soccer field there that I played, 6 to 8, 9 to 11 back with Holyoke Youth. Holyoke Youth is used a little bit, not a whole lot, but we will move forward to kind of get them down there because there's some parking versus other parks that have none. So, I mean, like I said, the spot's great, but what can we do and how do we do it well, max efficient with most money? But yeah, definitely the phase has to go because there's just too much stuff and just not enough money, to go around. So.
Thank you, Tom. Michael Falsetti.
Hi, Tom. You're certainly doing it the right way, no question. But I have to say, I would almost ask for double what you're asking for. Is this company going to do an engineering survey? What brings to mind is this: you may have sewage problems, you may have electrical conduits in the ground. You're right next to the Connecticut River. It seems to me that that being said, do we know if the whole area has no environmental problems, whether it be asbestos or coal dust or oil or any of these things, that an engineering firm would have to certify that it is free of all contaminants, if you will, that there are no sewage problems, there are no electrical problems, there's nothing in the ground that has to be removed prior to doing any work to the ground. You've got the Connecticut River right next to you, so to speak. Is this $30,000 going to cover all that?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, it depends on, obviously, the more digging and the more stuff that they would have to do, whether it was the special structures design, detailed design and engineering past just the layout of what they do. That's why I built that $5,000 buffer in there, just to see if there was extra stuff once they started digging. I know there's mapping stuff I think I included in my application of certain layouts of what's considered a wetland or what's considered the floodplain. Floodplain almost stops right before the railroad tracks, I believe. And there's that huge sewage overflow that runs down along those railroad tracks. So they would definitely know of, and that was just from conversation with them over the phone, to kind of see if we can get, this would be a good fit. And, there's, with plans that we have, we can know through, DPW, the engineering office, stuff like that, what's going to be in there, soils and stuff like that, as we go in there, we could definitely, have them test stuff, but
Tom,
I would.
The exclusions and
I understand
limitations.
that.
Michael, can I read from the letter? Do you mind if I read from the letter, Michael? Just so we can refer to it. So I was looking at the invoice from December 28th from SLR International Corporation, the scope of services. And then if you scroll down to the last page, where it has a section called exclusions and limitations. And it says, please note the following services are not included in this proposal. 1, environmental assessments, wetlands delineation, testing for contaminated materials, impact evaluations or similar studies. 2, detailed design and engineering. 3, design of any special structures like dugouts or press boxes or bleachers. 4, regulatory permitting, and then 5, a survey. And so I think one of the questions I had based on that is, like, from the master plan, will we then, I guess this is me showing that I'm still learning about how the bidding and planning process works for parks. But like, for example, from the Lady Liberty process that we went through with restoring the statue, like it was $15,000 for the study. Although I think it came a little bit underneath that. And they came up with like a very step-by-step, here is the scope of work. Here's exactly what you would do. I mean, it was all of the work. It was very detailed. And it was based on that. I mean, then basically that just gets put out to bid. Like, here is the exact scope of work. This is what we need you to do. How much will you charge us to do just this? And I'm wondering if this master plan will be more conceptual, and then those individual pieces will then end up having to actually have that detailed work done, or if this will actually provide enough to then put it out to bid.
Yeah, I was, excuse me, sorry about that. Yeah, I was going strictly for, the conceptual idea. And then when we figured out, where the main things were coming down, right? And then we can, if we're going to dig and do pickleball court somewhere, something like that, when that project came, we can go into that and start that process, because it would have to, depending on the work, obviously, the bidding process and the contracts and, that whole process, we would make sure we, go that route, be the correct way about it.
Okay, I want to make sure that we have time to hear from the 3 folks who haven't heard from yet. So let's start with Helene, and then I'll go to Mary.
Excuse me. Hi, thank you, Tom, for the presentation and for putting all this together and leading the amazing Parks and Rec department, as far as I'm concerned. I really just put my hand up after Izzy's comment, just to kind of be clear that I think the plan is definitely phases, but to have a sense of what those are gonna roughly look like. So, comparing how big maybe an entire new set of playground equipment is to something that's smaller, but then also that seems like there may be pieces of that then we could seek as Department of Parks and Rec other funding, and you have it kind of laid out. So just I think the conceptual makes sense, and to Megan's comment as well, that having that really in-depth step-by-step, if there isn't quite the consensus in the community that this is what's wanted, or that maybe doesn't make as much sense as starting at this point. And especially I think helpful with, we have new leadership in the department after a very long time, and an incredible service by Terry, obviously, but for Tom, like, this is the ground floor, and this is idea, this is connecting with the community, and this is getting the ideas. And then as those ideas are there, if we want to take on one, my guess is maybe additional requests may have more of that step-by-step, like what needs to be done to do this particular project. And that would be built in. So, I think it's good. I think it's a good start in terms of this park, and really thinking about all the ways that it can be used. And that, again, there may be, with trails, there may be a way to leverage other kinds of funding, and that I think we're more attractive to other funders if we have this bigger, like, conceptual idea of what to do with the park that's been shared with the community. So, I think this is that kind of laying the groundwork and moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mary, and then Ilona.
Okay, I was going to ask a couple of questions that were already answered. First of all, thank you, Tom, for presenting this project. I do agree with Michael that it seems like a small sum for what they have described that they're going to do. And I definitely agree with Megan in regards, and Helene, so I agree with everybody. Anyway, I just wanted to add in that over the summer, there was a lot of information offered from the historic preservation group in regards to the historic value of the park. So hopefully some of that will be included. I don't see it here on the list of things that the conceptualizing plan will do, but maybe you can ask them to keep that, to add that in. And I wanted to ask, if you are going to go for matching funds in the end, will this particular type of work be considered, is this the kind of thing you need? Usually they want an engineering survey. Is this going to be sufficient if you need matching funds from another organization later on? So that last question for Tom. Will this be enough if you're going to go for matching funds at some future point?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely based on what I talked with SLR and what they could propose to get this together, to go forward. Obviously there's that a la carte. We could go into it more if we wanted to, but you're right, it probably would be a couple more dollars. For the conceptual idea to kind of lay out our template, this would be, obviously that stepping stone where we could leverage, some more funding from other sources to get those projects moving forward, and then we can do, the other stuff more of that, in depth that way. So
I hope so from my understanding, there's two public meetings. The first public meeting is just initially trying to figure out what is the community interested in, and the second one is then presenting, here is actually what we think the master plan is going to be. And I wonder in that last meeting, if one of the focus areas can be, if this was phased out, which phases are most important to the community to happen when, right? And there might be some practicalities for why one has to happen before another, but I think that could be really helpful information for the Parks and Rec Commission to have when they are going to figure out, like, what CPA project do we want to see come forward in what order. My other thought based on what Mary just said is, I noticed that it said that there was going to be a city stakeholder group that would be used initially to start getting those ideas out so they could start just developing some options. And I'm wondering, clearly it should have folks from the commission, and I'm thinking also it should include folks who are in the vicinity, so neighbors who are abutting the park. And I also am thinking it probably makes sense, to Mary's point, to have someone from Holyoke Preservation Trust who knows the background of it as the Olmsted design, because there was an original Olmsted design for the park that was never utilized. And that could be something that could be really interesting, and also just good information for them to have, because sometimes it's really nice to have a bit of an homage, right? Like, oh, we kept this one part of the Olmsted design in the master plan that we came up with. Okay, Ilana, and then back to Israel.
Yeah, that's similar to Mary. A number of my questions were answered. I too am a little concerned that the $5,000 really doesn't allow for much that may come up. I think I use that park pretty regularly with my dogs, and one of the things that strikes me about the location of that park is that it's, the bottom of the hill, and everything just goes right down towards it. And also just that weird section of water between the trail and the river. Never fully kind of understood exactly what that is, and the well that's sitting there. I mean,
they're named in the Olmsted plan initially as they really wanted to build them out into swimming pools.
Yeah, I didn't know any of this information, and I just can't help but think that the historical component would be absolutely beneficial for people to know about. I find that, my little history geek sensors go way off when I hear that kind of stuff. And now that I know that about that park, makes me want to find out even more. And I really do love that flexible idea. You're right. I can count on maybe one hand the times I've seen kids playing in that sort of antiquated park. I see most people using trails and the tennis for the most part, but I rarely see people playing basketball or maybe hitting a ball around. But yeah, I agree with a lot of the statements. That would, in hindsight, could the tennis courts have been put in a completely different area to maybe open up the park? I guess the only major concern I have regarding that space is those trails, and I would hate to see.
And the sewage overflow to the left.
Trees coming down, and yeah. I mean, there's a lot there, and it does abut houses quite dramatically up on Cleveland. So, but thank you, Tom. It's really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's like, and that's the big thing too, is like this park has a lot of potential. What the potential really is, does the basketball court get used? Would a pickleball court get used there more, or would a handball or something else that's not there now that's maybe up and coming, or something where we can gain maybe some more field space, and then we can have different things out there. What I mean? And I don't know all the answers to what we could put there, but I know that these people with SLR have done it for Springdale, and they itemized it. They knew, they numbered it, what should be first, and what should be second and third, and depending on where it is in the park and what what's involved, whether it's building, and there's so much with Patas that potentially could be there. So like I said, I think this is the best route to go forward for improvements down the line in the future. And the historical part, there's a lot we can do there with a story walk. We can throw some things in the ground that, as you go through a path or a walk or to the viewing platform that maybe they're overlooking the river or whatever have you, you can learn something about it too, because there's a lot of background to it, and it ties into a lot bigger parks and stuff. And then we can start kind of getting that be a theme with the Pulaski Park and then Jones Point, and do that whole kind of circuit of historic that really have a big background, and bring what founded these parks and however long ago, and the names of what they mean, and present to the park. Some of them might be there, but they've been through the ringer a few times on posts, and that they turn green and whatever they might be in. So try to revamp that and bring that back to light, and why each park is named why it is, and a little bit of each part. So
and what we've learned too is the way that the CPA legislation is written, we can't do historical interpretation on signs, but if it's related to a Parks and Rec project that has directionality on it, right? Like this way to this feature, this way to that feature, or this is a map, but also it has some information on the sign that's connecting to its historical past, right? Or its meaning, then that's allowed. But you can't, for example, have like a historic project where you just do signs of the Olmsted parks, right? Unless it's keyed into really as a Parks and Rec project. So, all right, let's do a speed round through Israel, Michael, Nathan, Helene, and then Kat, if we can, in the next 6 minutes. Come on, we can do it. No, we can try.
I just wanted to say, when you do the outreach, let me know, and I'm down to help out with getting families to come out from the neighborhoods, and as well as trying to find other like neighborhood organizations that are like familiar with doing community outreach around that, just to make sure that families in that particular community are involved in the conversation, and not just that, but also families that use the park, if they use it for either playing soccer or playing baseball. So like teams that are associations, like the girls softball league or the girls soccer league or whatnot. For some reason, they should have a voice if they've used it or are using it. If they're not using it, it is what it is. But if they're using it, then they should kind of be included in the conversation. But other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward for me.
Hey, thank you, Z.
Michael?
Tom, I'll just go back again. I would have doubled the proposal. I would have gone for $60,000. Before you put a shovel in the ground, this is the state of Massachusetts. You're right by the Connecticut River. I'm afraid any conceptual plans you make, and no matter how many public meetings you have, maybe all for naught, if an environmental study indicates that there are problems with the ground where you tend to put a basketball court, a tennis court, or any other kind of activity. So Tom, I would strongly urge, and I know this is your department and not mine, but I would strongly urge, prior to spending a dime on any conceptual plans, is to make sure the total area is environmentally safe, from sewage, from electrical, being next to the Connecticut River. All those requirements are met, and only a detailed engineering survey and study can do this. So I think $60,000 is more appropriate, but I think if you have $30,000 for a conceptual plan, if you don't have a safe ground underneath your feet, and all mean for naught, it may be meaningless. I just want you to keep that in mind. I'm for your plan, I'll vote for it, but I think it may be all for naught if you don't have a firm engineering study of the whole area to find out what you can work with and what you cannot by law work with.
Do you mind reaching out to Chris Baker, the city engineer,
Absolutely.
and just get a sense of it and send us some communication as a committee?
Not a problem whatsoever.
Thank you. Okay, Nathan and then Helene.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, I think people already stated it, but in SLR's proposal, they specifically exclude environmental assessments and detailed design and engineering. So once the master plan gets done, there'll be a lot more additional costs. I mean, it's very typical. One quick question I would ask you, Tom. In these kind of projects, typically, does the master plan firm, do they become the architectural or design firm naturally, or do you do a competitive bid for the design work as well?
This is my first go around with a project from start to and through.
I think it would have to be competitive bid.
I think it would be a competitive bid.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Depending on what's going to be involved, but at this degree,
Anything after 10, anything above 10,000.
Great. Thank you very much, and good luck with the project. And maybe we should give you more money.
Thank you.
Helene?
Yeah, so just quickly, I've been thinking, as we've been talking about the Springdale master plan, and this committee probably isn't very aware of it because it is seeking other funding that it qualifies for. So, but it's been, I think, really helpful for us is just, they presented the plan. There were multiple meetings at the park to present it, during COVID, and they had multiple mock-ups of a map so it wasn't like we've taken it and this is what it's going to be. It's like kind of flexible. It could be, you could choose this as sort of a flow that would work, or this. And I'm pretty sure they highlighted where if you want to pursue this more, you would need this kind of type of study and you'd need this kind of engineering. So, you know, in terms of, I guess just like this ability to kind of look and conceptualize was felt really flexible and helpful in thinking about what can we do, because there's a ton on Springdale. If we had $1 billion, that would be amazing, but we don't. And so it's been helpful to think in chunks of like how we can really help the community. And there, the priority has been to do to redo, well, the playground equipment and now the sprinkler park, because those are the most used, and that was the feedback. So I believe that might still be online. I'm not quite sure where it would be, but I wonder if we could, you know, if people would be interested in just sharing what that looked like, just as you conceptualize kind of what the end result of this would be, as kind of the template and whether it would be useful. So I've found it very useful in thinking about planning for the park. So I am hopeful and feel pretty confident that this will also fill that gap.
Colleen, is it possible for you to send the master plan that we have for Springdale to the committee just so we have a sense of it?
I'd have to go back through my email.
I could send one along.
Does
Okay.
Tom, yeah, it's probably easier to
Yeah, that would be
send
great.
it out.
And then last, Israel. Did you want to talk?
I never put my hand down. My bad.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. All right. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in support of the project or have a question about the project? All right. Well, let's end
How about
there.
anybody from the public?
Mhm. Yep, including anyone from the public. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciated the proposal, and also just being able to walk it through. These conversations are really helpful for the committee because it allows us to really fully understand the project proposal. So thank you for being willing to answer all the questions and let us, you know, sort of, even if sometimes it's not direct, you know, sometimes it's us figuring out the project and what its effect would be on the community, which helps us when we later then go score the project. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. And again, I appreciate each one of you, what you do in this whole process. It's hefty, and I'm glad it's not on my shoulders. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Okay, so I understand that the next applicant, we're going to go back to the YMCA project, and Kathy Means was able to
Actually, I'm sorry,
join with Josh Abrams.
but Meg, it's actually a different order in terms of the actual sign up, because some people were flexible and it got changed around from the agenda. So the next up is actually Yoni from Gloutak Woods, and then
Oh, was YMCA last?
Yes, the YMCA is
Okay.
last. Anniversary Hills is second to last.
Perfect. All right, welcome. Then we'll go to Yoni Glogauer.
Hi, I'm Yoni Glogauer, Holyoke Director of Conservation and Sustainability. I have a brief presentation. May I share a screen?
Can you do that? Because I did make you co-host.
Yeah.
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 Great.
Cool. Can you all see that pretty good?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
can make it even better. So this is what we're calling phase 2 for the Anniversary Hill Park project. I know the naming is getting a little confusing because our previous CPA ask was also called phase 2. That was for site survey and 25% design. This is sort of a continuation of that same process, so we kept the number 2. But just to give a brief recap, I think I know most of you, but I think some of you weren't on the CPA committee at the time of last year's application. We got funding from CPA in 2021 for phase 1, which was the acquisition of 14.1 acres north of Scott Tower. This whole park is Holyoke's biggest park. It came into being in 1923 for Holyoke's 50th anniversary as a city. And the western half of the park has been undermanaged for some decades now, since I-91 was built and cut through the center of the park. So these 14.1 acres came up for sale. We partnered up with Custer Land Trust, who's a co-applicant on this application. And we worked together to acquire these acres, put them under permanent protection, and we used a combination of CPA and Land and Water Conservation Fund dollars. And that also funded a preliminary site design process, that first CPA award. So, you know, this has been a priority for the city for decades, revitalizing the Anniversary Hill Park and Scott Tower. It's mentioned in the community preservation plan when CPA was adopted in Holyoke. So this was sort of a preliminary site design process with some community feedback that we did about a year and a half ago. And these are pictures from the event, some site concepts. There's a children's drawing exercise, what we could do with the tower. We'll see what we can do with that one. We had
That's my
board.
son's drawing that you just showed.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Kind of brilliant, yeah.
I wasn't sure who it belonged to. If you want it back, I can give it to you.
I feel like it's for the city. I mean, that's like, it's like a roller coaster coming off the top. That I remember him explaining in a big clown.
The thing on the left, that is pretty impressive.
Wow.
Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, it's great. I learned something tonight also. So we developed some preliminary site concepts. We did an inventory of resources that were known to exist. In yellow, these are all the stone structures that were built by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the late 30s, early 40s. Preliminary concept for what an access kiosk from Community Field might look like. Funky kiosk. We partnered with GZA Geo-Environmental to do that. So, you know, here's some pictures of the park in its current state. Here's an old remnant picnic table from when the park was more open and less forested. This awesome stone staircase and kind of a menagerie of different structures, bridges, culverts. Here's Scott Tower itself. So we've progressed in the project since that time. We weren't ready to do the full design and build out yet because we knew we would need to secure a lot more funding to make phase one really work out. And we had to deal with a number of challenges that exist in the park that were making some of our funding sources inaccessible. The main challenge we were encountering was the fact that there's a cell phone tower that was built in 2001, and there's overhead utility poles that service it all along Scott Tower Road, leading up from Community Field. To get Land and Water Conservation Fund funding and park grants and several other funding sources, all overhead utilities need to be buried in the park. However, those same funding sources won't pay for the burial. So we had some puzzles to figure out the past year. But fortunately, we've gotten there. And so now we're ready to come back before CPA and do a more substantial ask to add to the overall phase one improvements. So this is still just a preliminary site concept. We've continued to work with GZA Geo-Environmental. We're going to do continued design in fiscal year 23. We're going to bring concepts they developed since the community vision event back to more community meetings in a similar process. But what we're probably looking at is developing this access road, which the city's always owned, and burying the utilities there. It's a much shorter path from 141, and we can bury it in this part of the park here. But what you're seeing outlined in green, these are areas where we can likely do some landscaping. We heard pretty clearly from the community that they wanted it to remain mostly forested nature space, which makes sense with how the landscape is. But these are areas where we can work on restoring stone structures and doing some selective landscaping to open it up and make it a more varied destination. So here's how we did last year for funding. Didn't get every grant we applied for, but I think we did pretty good. We got a substantial amount from community development block grant funding. Our initial award was 500,000, and then they gave us an extra amount through processes I don't fully understand, but I wasn't going to complain. We did manage to get $520,000 from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. For the access road design that I mentioned, it can be used for all the site amenities and landscaping, CCC stonework. We got a Mass Trails grant for $100,000. We think it's really important to build an accessible trail that wheelchair users can use, or people who are less able-bodied, to be able to access Scott Tower, because right now it's pretty inaccessible to get to. Here's our 30K from CPA. We haven't expended this funding yet, but we've signed a contract with GZA that combines this 30,000 with 10,000 from Mass Trails to do site survey and design and sort of the design for the accessible trail. CPA was the match for Mass Trails, and those two together combined with portion of CDBG was the 50% for LWCF. I won't bore you with the details of how these all had to fit together, but it works. Finally, we got a $390,000 from the Gateway Cities Park grant. We were talking about the funding gap for the utility burial. Just needed some extra funding. And Kurt Gartner from EEA was sympathetic to our pleas. So we got an extra $390,000. So this is our total funding secured to date, which looks pretty good for a park improvement. But if you look at our preliminary concept plan that GCA it's based on what we were able to raise, right? And you'll notice a lot of the funding had to go to the utilities. We have to do trenches, do underground conduits, access road. It's quite expensive. So really what we're asking from CPA is $100,000 to supplement sort of the CPA eligible activities that are related to restoring the CCC structures, site amenities, improving trails and walkways, and doing some site restoration and landscaping. This is still the original budget. If we get our award from you or some amount, it'll be in excess of 1.615 million. But it's just going to make us, I don't know, better able to, we want phase one to be, you know, the beginning of hopefully future restoration at the park. But we really need it to be a punctuated whole unto itself to really get more people interested in coming there and making it a destination for all Holyoakers and people in the region. But of course, a lot of people go there already. We're just trying to expand the positive affections people have for this space. So I circled these because maybe it wasn't clear in the application where the funding would be going. But these are the categories that would be supplemented with those funds. So just going to end with the historic postcard of Scott Tower in its heyday in the 40s, and hopefully imagine together what this space can be. That's all.
You mentioned that you got almost every grant that you wanted. Was there a grant that you didn't get that you wish that you had?
Yeah. Destination Development Capital Grant through MOT, the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism. Really tried to make a case that this is a cool destination for the region and puts Holyoke on the map. And they didn't give it to us. That would have gone towards part of the sort of the design and permitting costs. That's now covered by Land and Water Conservation Fund. But if we had gotten it again, we could have reallocated LWCF funds to more trail improvements or other amenities. So yeah, it hurt my feelings, but I moved on.
Well, dude, you came up with $1.6 million in funding. So I would say like lots of snaps to you for bringing in this amount of money to our city just based on some blood, sweat, tears, and lots of asks.
Yeah, and our amazing collaboration with Kestrel Land Trust. I should have mentioned that earlier. They've been working with us in lockstep every part of this. And I should mention that Mark Bumsley is also here as a co-applicant to help answer questions.
Thank you. All right, I see. Is your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, I just do want to acknowledge the thoroughness. I can't help but sort of think about the way in which you're going about getting funding. You could take this the wrong way, but in similar ways, the Victory Theater, like how many options are available to continue to get the money needed. I happened to be there on Saturday doing what I was told was a site visit for the Historic Commission. So I happened to have gone up the trail and seen, surveyed all of this land. And it is, right now it's an enormous stretch to sort of think about what could be there and what was there. We know that there was a very popular pool at one point that was used up there, and the remnants of yesteryear are few and far between. But I am really hopeful for this project, and again, would really just like to commend you and your colleagues for pursuing the funding that you are, because it's really hard to get for this kind of thing. So kudos.
Oh, thank you.
Israel Rivera, your hand's up.
Yeah, so I just want to say, awesome job, Yoni. You've been doing an awesome job chasing the grants, getting them. You're not gonna get them all, but I mean, you try. But the only one concern I have is maintenance, like long-term maintenance of whatever it is that we restore, or just park maintenance in general. I know now we're working on improving that, but like I hope you're working, or there's conversation with DPW and Parks and Recs to work on how staffing a lot of this is gonna look like in the future, so that way we can ask the mayor for the funding. But other than that, that's pretty much it from me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And we're starting to have really important conversations. Oh, Tom, you're still here. Yeah, I've been meeting with Tom and the mayor to talk about that very concern, because we're really reaching the point where, I don't know, like this has always been a big community effort, but ongoing maintenance and seeing the park through for the next 100 years really is a full city community effort.
I see Tom, and I also see Lynn with her hand up. Let's go to Tom Reynolds and then Lynn Haran.
Yeah, real quick. Excuse me. Sorry, I should have done before. Yeah, we've been in talks with Yoni about maintenance and where that falls. If and when everything's done and completed there, where does that fall? And that'd be on us. And then at that point, we're gonna have to take a different look at what we have for staffing capabilities, maybe for the lack of better terms, there to see what we can do and start looking more of a ranger type, quote unquote, like the state may have for DCR at the state reservation, or these other ones to, excuse me again, I'm so sorry, to make sure that we're taking care of, obviously the amount of money that goes into that park is astronomical. So we need to protect that as much as we can. And then we are definitely, we would be, we're the group to work on that. And like I said, like Israel said, that we are working on trying to button up that park now, and I'm trying to get that going before this even gets to fruition completely. So we have a set way of how we're going to deal with this. And then when the upgrade happens, it just happens and it flows with, and we already are going to have that rather than scrambling with. So he has our full support in the maintenance and keeping this wonderful thing we'll have coming back to fruition, and our whole community pipeline to use. So.
Nathan Chung.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Yes, adding to what Councilor Rivera said, I think some projects, a lot of city projects, depending on what you do, the cost of maintenance is so high that sometimes it's fiscally counterproductive to do very expensive and complex updates. That's, I think, a big lesson in many governments now. And the other thing is, I read through the, I mean, I I read the application, but didn't like, really like detail word for word. Would you be able to just quickly summarize Kestrel's role in this? Because I saw them listed as a co-applicant.
Yeah, do you want to take that one, Mark?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. I know I've met some of you before, but it's great to meet the rest of you as well. Yeah, we committed to this project a number of years ago, and I think, as Yoni explained, we were heavily involved in phase one. We pre-acquired the 14 acres that were on the market, and they were under threat for development. They were pretty critical to the future for the park. Both Kestrel and the city felt. So we stepped in, took out a loan, purchased those with the intent to sell them to the city. So I think once we got into that, we really realized that this was the opportunity, to revitalize this park. So we committed to being a partner with the city basically in any way we can. We're in the process of finishing the conservation of that 14 acres right now. So that's getting buttoned up, but we want to be part of the park's future as well. So we've been working with Yoni where we can to help get funding, help with grant applications, help with the community outreach and better understand the city communities and what they would want from a park like this. And then I think longer term, we can certainly help looking into the city basically either establishing a fund or working also to establish kind of a community friends of group. I know there's a nascent group right now or an unofficial group for the park, but to kind of help, that get started so the community surrounding the park and the users of the park can also have eyes on it and assist with, the parks department in kind of maintaining the park. And again, just kind of building a love and connection to the park and making sure that there's buy-in from the community to care for it for the next 100 years. So a lot of it, we're just kind of going with what Yoni says. He's really in the lead. He says, we need this right now. I need your help with the grant application. Can you come up with a little bit of funding for this? We're there to help and back up the city and to back up Yoni in the overall project.
Thank you. Lynn,
Hi, can you hear me okay?
sorry, I got lost in the queue.
Oh, no problem. I was a little slow starter tonight, so I'm just chiming in mostly. First, as an individual resident of Holyoke who absolutely loves the outdoors, always has, and sees that truly as a very marketable, economically and otherwise, aspect of Holyoke in general is our great outdoors. Also married to a forest ecologist who Yoni works with and is on the Conservation Commission. I am myself a disabled person that utilizes a wheelchair and still wants to participate not only in all community activities in my city and contribute as well, but definitely wants to continue my outdoors experience as well. So the first thing I want to do is to commend Yoni in general. We're very lucky to have him in the city of Holyoke, period. But definitely on this project. And as from everything I've heard, the Scott Park project has been one of the most talked about and popular projects related to the CPA. And that's kind of an important thing because the reality is there are some people who would like to see the CPA go away. And so I think it's really important to keep encouraging the successful projects we've had so far that people do feel an affection and respect for. Outside of that, again, as a disabled person, I'm also a member of the Holyoke City's Commission on Disability. It would be an understatement for me to say we cannot open up any of these projects that the CPA supports enough to people who are disabled. They are an increasing percentage of our community. And I really like when I see any leadership respond to this group of people. And certainly Yoni has contacted me about this particular project in it. And I understand it's a wonderful project, but it is not particularly accessible to people like me. And as I always tell all people, in any role like this tonight that often think there aren't that many of us. We are 15 to 20% of the global population. We are actually a huge percentage of Holyoke, of our nation in general. And we want to be contributing members economically and otherwise, not only in enjoying these kind of events and community projects, but participating also in terms of helping to develop them. So I really appreciate Yoni's reaching out to us and considering that. We are a growing force. We're getting to be smarter in our activism. But I would also say that the really kind of logical aspect of including people who are disabled in any of these projects is because the country is becoming a little wiser to us as well, that there are more grants in which they stipulate an inclusion of us. Certainly within the Build Back Better bill, we're seeing that. So as he has already utilized, we can be very helpful in our support, helping you to accrue the funds that you need for all these projects. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. And I appreciate everybody in the CPA. I think this is a great program, and I appreciate an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yoni, I was actually really liking looking at the map and seeing the way that you're in shifting access to it. So in particular, having a parking area that is post the underpass, am I using the right term?
Yeah.
I think is a game changer in terms of it allows it to feel more like a park, right? Because right now you have to cross underneath that underpass in order to get access to it, which feels a little strange. The park does feel bisected by the highway. That's largely why it really fell into disrepair and disuse over time. So I think shifting it and sort of encouraging folks to drive up that section park, now you've actually entered the park, I think actually works in some ways. And I also think having the additional access point off of 141 is also a huge shift in how people will access the park, because people will be able to park close to Scotts Tower and still access it versus have to go all the way up through the trail system or up the access road. So that I think is a huge benefit in terms of accessibility.
Yeah, definitely. The credit for the parking lot idea is actually due to Anya Duffy of GZA. She kind of dreamed that up for exactly the reasons you're stating. It's a little uninviting to walk under 91. And it'll continue to be an option even if we build the second parking, but we're also worried about overwhelming the parking capacity at Community Field, which is also a very popular destination.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much. If there is any other comment, now is the moment. Otherwise, we're going to move to hearing your second application.
Yeah,
Mary, go ahead.
I'll let Lynn go first.
Thanks, Mary. I just wanted to quickly add 2 points. One, in terms of accessibility, what we also find, whether it's safe streets, parks, or whatever, that when you afford those kind of things to people that are disabled, you're also hitting other groups of people with young children in carriages, baby carriages, strollers, things like that. But the other thing I think that are good questions in terms of maintenance, particularly for parks, is just that maintaining them is difficult. Talk to anybody that works in parks nationally or otherwise. It is an issue, weather changes, etc. But I gotta say, like so many things, if it becomes a part of universal design and master planning and built into the budget, it's not so nearly as much an economic or a problem or an issue as when you actually implement it in a plan. It's what we should actually be considering in virtually any type of project. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you. Mary Moriarty.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that, as the
All right. Thank you. Okay, Yoni, do you want to move to your second application?
Sounds good. Hi again. All right, so another phase 2 Gloutak Woods trail improvements. As Megan mentioned in her presentation, this was the first open space CPA project for Holyoke. I'm reusing a few slides from last year, so I hope no one notices, but they're still pertinent. Here's the location, Gloutak. Gloutak, I've heard is the more correct pronunciation.
Gloutak? I thought it was Gloutak.
You know, something. We'll get to the bottom of that. I'll do some more research. The parcel in question is accessible off of Rock Valley Road. Here's Gloutak Park, which the city already owned. And now here's the adjacent Gloutak Woods, almost 52 acres. Really prime conservation land, no matter how you look at it. Sort of a ridge line through the middle here, or on the eastern side, or starting on the western side and climbing associated with the Mount Tom Range, not part of the Mount Tom Range, but the same geologic formation, close below the soil ledge and deciduous forest. So here's sort of the context of why it was important from a conservation perspective, how it sort of ties in with all these other protected lands to make a tight network. Existing trail system. These are pictures from early on after the acquisition. You can see there's illegal ATV access, which was probably ongoing since long before the city owned the property. Definitely people have been coming on these trails for a long time, but now that it's owned by the city, we have to think about making it accessible and inviting to all Holyokers who want to walk the trails there. So that was the impetus for our last year's CPA application. We got funding to hire greenagers. This is a nonprofit organization based in the Berkshires. They hire and train and lead trail crews composed of teenagers from the communities where those properties exist. So we put out a bid and we were able to hire greenagers and their services. So here's most of the crew on one of the bog bridges that they built in Gloutak. Joshua, Aiden, Jason, Isaiah, Daniel. This was their crew leader, Kate Ledger, and of course, Elena missed photo day, unfortunately. So she's not pictured, but definitely an important part of the crew. There she is back there. So here's a picture of, we were putting together some stream crossings. There's an intermittent stream that runs through the center of the property. We dragged the mayor out there to help out for a morning. That was helpful and fun. And it meant a lot to the crew to get to hang out with the mayor, I think, as well. Here's them on their popsicle break. They worked really hard, but popsicle break. And here's Eli Fry, who was one of the full-time Greenagers employees. So we made great improvements and it was really valuable. We didn't expend 100% of the funds yet. CPC graciously gave us 3 years to complete the project. So we have a little over 9,000 left from the season. They didn't expend all the funds. It was really hot There were days that it wasn't feasible to do trail work because of the hot conditions. And there's also a delay in getting the trail kiosk installed because Green Acres subcontracted that with a separate organization that creates them, but they're going to do the installation. The plan is they will spend the rest of those funds this spring before any other of their crews start to install the trailhead kiosk and also finish up some of the trail improvements and reroutes from last year. However, in the process of doing this work, I met with Aaliyah Del Molino, who's the conservation director at Green Acres, and sort of oversaw the activities at a high level. And we identified a number of other projects that could probably constitute another season of work at Gloutak and further improve the ecological improvements and usability of the trail systems. So these are a number of reroutes. There's areas where a trail exists, but that wasn't necessarily in the best location for a trail. You can see the topo lines here and how tight together they are. That means a steep slope. So here's where the trail currently runs. And here's a proposed route that kind of does a little switch back and would make the trail go on a sustainable grade. I have an embarrassing story to share. Megan, when you sent out Luis to do the video project, we were getting some footage of the vernal pool, and he came up this trail and he kept falling down. There's a thick mat of leaves on the ground. He kept falling over and cradling his $10,000 camera for dear life.
I'm surprised they didn't make it into the film.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, his wife was in City Hall the next day and she said, "So I heard you tried to kill my husband in the forest." So I felt pretty bad. But just to illustrate, there are things we can do to improve the trails and make this a better space for the Holyoke community to come to. The other project activity has to do with more closures. This is the official trail system in Gloutak, but there's a number of trails that lead off property. Some of the abutters are okay with this, some of them are not, but it is a vector for illegal ATV access. So strategically, we do need to do some more work to close those off with brush, put up signage indicating that it's a prohibited activity under the terms of our conservation restriction and can present a threat to the sensitive wetland system that's in the property. So I have a rough schedule here of what it would look like if we got the award for another season of work at Gloutak, similar to last year's. It'd be another 7 or 8 week season of work in July and August. We would have to put it out to bid again as something that's over $10,000. But based on the activities from last year, these are the approximate costs of what it would take to do that. Oh, I forgot to mention the timber staircase. Where is that going? Yeah, there's a timber staircase we want to put into on one of the really steep grades where there's just no good way to bring the trails around. So, yeah, I guess that's what I got for that one.
What was the amount that CPC paid last time for the first phase of the trail developments?
The first award was for $46,000.
Okay,
So
and this
comparable.
ask is for an additional $46,000.
Yeah.
So it's the same amount.
Sorry, it was $47,000 last year and $46,000 this year. Last year, there was a little extra cost associated with some of the trail crossings because Green Acres had to bring in their trained chainsaw person to fell 2 eastern hemlock trees and split them, and then the crew transported them by hand.
Alana?
Yeah, thanks again, Yoni. As expected, very thorough presentation. I've never actually been to this area, so I'm kind of eager to check it out. One thing that I'm curious about, because this is a trail as opposed to the last project, which is sort of this entire area, and there are multiple elements to it. Is part of the work that Greenacres does similar to like the Appalachian Trail or Long Trail workers who also do the maintenance for trail markings and things like that? Because trail markings, as we know, are an incredible safety measure. Even the most seasoned hikers can get thrown off in the woods, and I, for one, I'm rather embarrassed to say I got completely lost on, I don't know if it was Kestrel Trust lands, but it's not fun to have to be rescued from the middle of the woods because you don't know how to find your way out. So that being said, are there elements to what Greenacres does that are similar to, say, like the Appalachian Mountain Club or Long Trail in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And yes, they do. I forgot to mention that last summer they did put blazes up for all the trail system at Gloutak. They'll be installing a trail kiosk where there'll be a map at the entrance. Yeah, they definitely do a wide variety of activities, and that's what makes them so cool to work with. Great. As well as the fact that we got to hire our own Holyoke teens to do the work.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I would just really highlight that going forward, that this is an opportunity for Holyoke youth to, find work, get that experience, keep jobs, explore their environments. Is just one last question. Is this something that's would be maintained through the winter as well, that could be used as like a snowshoeing or cross-country skiing trail and that kind of thing as well?
Absolutely. I don't know how easy it'd be to cross-country ski. A lot of the trails are a little narrower. But you're welcome to try. I would not do very well.
No, I'm not a cross-country skier, but I'm just curious. Thanks.
Sure.
It strikes me that I was just going back over the application. It strikes me that the first round of trail development was very much a let's lay the groundwork. This application very much feels like now let's really make the trails good. Let's make sure that they're really usable. Let's make sure that they're sustainable. Let's make sure that they don't fall down next year. Yeah. So I could, initially, I will be honest, I looked at the map and I was like, well, how come it's as much money for, it looks like a lot less because you look at the red line versus the yellow line, right? But then you go back in the application and you're describing like all of the work it's going to take, like create switchbacks and really build them out, like timber staircases, like really make it so that they're really well-designed trails. And it's like detail work. So that makes me understand more the labor costs and why it will cost as much as it will to do what visually doesn't look like as much work as last time.
Yeah, totally. And I learned a lot last summer just walking around with the crew and seeing what they were learning, things I never would have noticed on a trail. He was saying, like, when it rains, it's going to puddle here. You need to create a water bar and give it a place for it to go. Really on a very minute scale, all along different sections of the trail. So it really made me happy with our choice in contractor and confident this will be a lasting legacy.
Helene.
Just quickly, I felt like I didn't say anything about the last project, even though, I love that project, just because so many people were saying how amazing the presentation was, and, I was adding on. But I will say that was an amazing presentation. This is an amazing presentation. This project may be really like the best of CPA. It's awesome to see those photos of the kids, and it is really also like, it is a really remarkably, I feel like, modest amount to ask. I mean, for that level of like being able to engage youth, create jobs, and have that money really stay in our community. It's really, it's just like a really great thing and makes me really happy. And I'm so excited that, that you're going to be able to work on it again and improve hopefully this summer. And I also am hoping that this can be a model for other kinds of trail maintenance and other kinds of support. Holyoke's really big. There are, little hidden areas to walk in the woods all over, including on Anniversary Hill. And so, just to really, you're kind of creating this model and learning about how maybe to utilize youth in a different way over the summer. That's obviously not part of your project now, but it's just creating these templates and creating these kind of amazing projects. And it really is I think just incredibly modest amount of money for what the bang that we get back is. And so thank you for shepherding this, putting this forward, giving us this opportunity. And I'm just going to gush and gush, but thank you so much. Very excited about this project continuing this summer.
Oh, thanks, Helene.
Just to clarify, did you say that you believed that while we do have to go out to bid, it's likely that it would be Greenacres again?
It seems likely. I have
Based
to
on how
check
you
with
write
the,
it.
yeah. I have to check with the procurement officer, so don't quote me. But I think you're allowed to put into bid as a positive attribute prior experience with a spacer project. We would still have to grade any applicants or any bidders, but we could count that as extra points or something. So yeah, we'll put it out to bid again and see, but they were the only one who bid last time actually. Because it's under 50,000, we just have to solicit quotes from 3 firms. And
Colleen?
Oh, I just was going to say, if I recall from looking into this, Greenacres from last year, is that they really do have also special training in terms of working with younger people and, and sort of making the ecology part of it, really making it a rich experience. That seems like they're a nonprofit, is that right? Or yeah. I mean, It just seems like it's hard to imagine other organizations out there doing this really niche work and that level with that kind of really kidmit kind of connection of not just creating the trails and having the expertise, which of course is very important, but recognizing, that the point is to work with young people and to make this a fulfilling work experience and an empowering experience. So, I feel like there's just a lot of positives there, and obviously it goes out to bid, but it does seem like Greenacres really is intentional and has a program that makes this a very special kind of connection and employment program compared to others I've heard of. So it's hard to imagine another group matching all of those special pieces.
for sure.
All right. Yoni, did you want to say something?
I don't know if it's useful or not, but actually Aaliyah just messaged me. I invited him to watch the presentation and he said he's happy to chime in and talk about his organization if anyone wants to hear more.
Sure.
But I don't know.
Hi, everyone. My name's Aaliyah. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the conservation director at Greenacres. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I recognize that we'll have to bid on this project. And, I'm hopeful that we are selected. The experience we had last summer in Holyoke was really powerful. In my experience at Greenacres, I've been doing this work for 10 years now, and to come into a new community and have the sort of reception that we did at job fairs and through mass hire, the amount of interest there was in the youth in the community was actually really inspiring. I think we had us, as well as the Appalachian Mountain Club, had 2 of the longer lines at most of the high school job fairs that we attended. And that was really a tremendous sight. Having the mayor out was another really incredible experience. Like you all mentioned, we do some educational experiences with the crew. One of the neater ones that we did last summer was we actually had some herpetologists come out as a part of the project and the permitting involved in doing the trail work. We actually had to do some trainings on how to identify a couple species of snakes. So we had to walk around looking for snakes. And actually looking up into the trees because they're arboreal snakes. So that was really exciting. So I just wanted to say very briefly that we were over the moon about the project last summer, and as Yoni mentioned, we'll be finishing off most, if not all, of that work this spring over April vacation. We actually hope to hire back most of the crew from last summer, so there's continuity there, which I think also would be really powerful and inspiring. So whether or not we're selected for this second phase of work, we'll be back this spring with hopefully the same group, and would encourage anybody to come out over April vacation to visit. We'll have extra tools and hard hats if anybody decides to do so.
Yeah, please connect with me so that I can send that out to the committee. I would love that.
Terrific. Will do.
All right. Does anyone else want to speak in support of the project, either from the committee or the public, or forever hold your peace? Mary has your hand.
Yep, I just want to, of course, reinforce, all of the positive things everyone has said about this project. I liked Elia's use of the word powerful. I have to agree, seeing the kids out there, seeing this, this presentation that Yoni had, all of that really does leave an impact on the viewer. Also, I have used this trail many times, and it's just really great. If anybody wants a little tour, let me know. That's it. Thank you.
I would love that. I want to have a CPC hike.
Okay.
I'm not joking.
That's a great
I
idea.
really do.
I'm in.
We can do that.
Talk about things.
We can do that.
Hey, we can have a quorum. We just can't talk CPC business.
Okay.
All right. I did want to name that one of the categories in the rubric talks about supporting documentation. And I did want to highlight that I noticed that you really included like every document we asked for, all right, in both of these applications, including letters of support, as well as there's for every city project, there's a letter that we require from the mayor that just says, yes, I am aware of this project. I am in support of this project going forward. And here is the liaison from the city to the CPC for this project. And then he has to sign off on it. So I just want to specify that those documents were all included for both of Yoni's projects, and members of the committee, prior to scoring the applications, go back in and look for those things, because if you're noticing there are no letters of support, or there is not, if it's a city project, if there's no letter from the mayor acknowledging the project, then those are missing pieces. And Amy has been doing her due diligence on email, just so everyone knows, to reach back out to applicants to say things like, hey, notice we're missing this letter, or do you have letters of support that you want to include? Right? Those things are occurring on the background. But if you're noticing those things are not in the application or being sent to you by email, just take note of that. Okay. We're going to move to our last applicant, but not least. We're excited. We're here. There was one year where I put all of these on one night. We went to like almost midnight. It was terrible. So now we put them on 2 nights. I think we're doing great. It's only 7:40. We're rolling into the last one. All right, so take it away, introduce who you are, and jump us into your project.
Well, good evening, everyone. First of all, I'm Kathy Veens. I'm the CEO at Holyoke YMCA here, and joining me tonight is Josh Abrams, who is a volunteer who also serves as our property chair. So he probably can answer some of the hard knock kind of questions that I can't answer. I want to just do a quick presentation. I'm not going to take a long time. We have a very different ask than the other groups, and believe me, I understand this is a difficult choice, and you've got a lot to think about. So I just want to share what we're trying to do here. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint, hopefully. There we go. Get the slideshow. And it's quick, I promise. So pretty much for us, first of all, we have been, in this community from inception. We are here really for the full community and working to achieve everyone's fullest potential. So we pretty much work with people of all ages, abilities, anything along the way. So quick overview of the why. We were established in 1885. Our original building was actually on the corner of Appleton and High Street. In the mid 40s, it burned down. So that's when we came to this new location. It is a volunteer-led organization, so it's really volunteers who are living and working in this community that really are driving the work we do. We serve over 1,350 people from the greater Holyoke area, and we've had more than 3,000 people over the course of the year in and out of programs, activities, or anything that we have done here. We also will never refuse anyone's service. So we meet people where they are. So we are an organization that if people cannot afford full fee, we talk with them, and probably about 35% of our members or users receive some kind of financial assistance. So when I think about what we're trying to do, we're really trying to continue to improve on what we have here, what we can offer to the people at the YMCA, as well as in the community in our neighborhood. So we want to encourage healthy living and healthy activity in open air for children and families. We want to create a play surface that's safe and inviting. We want to engage our friends and neighbors and make sure that we have shared usage of the space. Then we want to enhance it so that families can come with their children. And we especially have started to work now here. We have a preschool on site, and the preschool also needs that outdoor area. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of a picture of what it looked like in 2018. So in 2018, you can see the condition of the grass. You can see some is dirt, some is grass. This really is the area we're working on still, and it's the lower left corner of the space that we really need to find a way to level and create really safe play space. In 2019, we were fortunate enough to work with Kaboom and have a Kaboom grant. And we were able to build up part of it and put in a really nice state-of-the-art kind of play space, which our neighbors have used, but also our kids and our programmers use all the time. That was done with 200 volunteers. So the overall cost for us really was prepping the land, and then a lot of time and a lot of energy, which was really fortunate. Now we know we need to take a step farther. So here's a conceptual drawing of the play space. Where you see the red outlines and you see the green, that's the space we're working on now. It's about 6,000 square feet.
Is anyone else able to hear the applicant?
I was just going to say, it seems like she froze.
Yeah. Let's just give them a minute or two.
She gone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm guessing they got kicked out, but they'll come back in.
Can I ask a question that was a little confusing to me? And maybe it's just my naivete about not being originally from Holyoke. This is for the YMCA, but there seems to be quite a bit of Boys and Girls Club documentation in this. Why is that? I'm confused. So when you scroll down, the Declaration of Restrictive Covenant says Boys and Girls Club of Greater Holyoke. So I guess I'm a little confused. Is
What
that
page? What page are you talking about?
if down to, it's attachment 6.
Okay.
I read that as a supporting document, but
Okay.
but
Quite,
you know,
quite
doesn't
long
mean that's what it is.
legalese. And also,
Yeah, I have. I think in
the-
general, there are some questions about the documentation. There's a few places.
Okay. I just wanted, I mean, obviously we'll figure it out when we hear all of this. I just really didn't know what I was looking at.
No, that I think when we get to questions, there's going to be a
Okay.
number of questions
Okay, thanks.
that are specifically tied to the documentation.
Got it.
You're back.
Hi, sorry, my internet, it's just one of those days. The internet kicked me out. That's the unfortunate part. Where I heard you say you couldn't hear me. Did you hear me part of the way through?
Yes. So, if you want to go back to the map where you had shown the conceptual drawing, yep, and pick up from there.
Okay, so let's go for the current slide. There we go. So with this slide, where you see the red outlined marks, that's the area we're really concentrating on at this point in time. And what we want to do is get that leveled. We're going to have to dig out the soil. We're going to have to bring in better soil, because what's there right now is really, we're finding we've got bricks, rocks, glass coming up through the surface. I think it's just from past of what it was. I grew up across the street from the Y, so it was a tarred parking lot at one point in time on part of that space, and then the other part was like a garage. So between the two, I think at that time some of it may have gotten buried more than removed. So what we're finding is that's raising up through the surface now. So we want to create a safe play space. Thus, the more rectangular space would be where our preschool play area would go, and we have approximately 39 children right now in our preschool program that go outdoors daily. And then the other area would be for really outdoor play for our after school kids. We usually have anywhere from 70 to 90 children per day. In the summer, we probably have more, about 120. And we spend a lot of time outside. So just to give you an idea of the space, it's about 6,000 square feet that we're trying to address. So really what we really want to do, and this is the second phase after the first phase with the Kaboom build, is we create that toddler play area. We create a play space that is safe for them to play on. We want to put some interactive items in there. And they want sandboxes. That's the big thing that they really want. And that's easy enough to do, but it's the surface primarily we're focused on and what we have to do within the surface. And then the multi-purpose open rec space really is leveling it. And our hope is really to put some kind of a synthetic type surface there, knowing that if we just put sod there, that the number of children that are on it on a daily basis, it's going to really just continually need to be updated, improved upon constantly, because the kids are on it all the time. It just won't last. So for us, we really are looking, as I said, at that primary space that we were talking about there. And, it really is where you see the orange fence here. We've put some permanent fencing. We may have to move a little bit of it, but we've made it that we can move it relatively easy. But we need to fence it off by code to childcare codes, because we're a licensed program here. So we've done some of that, but this spring we are going to focus on really trying to dig down, repair, and replace the surface in those two areas so that we can have it level. And our hope is it can be used year round and be used well year round by a number of different people, including not just the youth that we serve on a daily basis, but adults and seniors could go out there and do some fitness classes and exercises during the day when we don't have children here for after school. Our neighbors can come over and use it, which we have had neighbors that have come over and used it on a fairly regular basis. And then unique to this area completely is a toddler play area, which really does not exist at all in this area. So that's really what we're focused on. And I know it's very different than the other requests, but I guess my thing, I would remind you that the 150 kids that we serve a day, they're all families from Holyoke. They're all people who rely on us for their childcare services. And to be able to provide a really safe surface for them to play on is really our next focus. So that's, I don't know what kind of questions you may have for us. We're happy to answer as we can.
Well,
thank you. I see Alana's hand first and then Mary.
Yeah, I was just looking through the paperwork and trying to find the spot where I saw this that brought up a little concern for me. And I wish I could find it specifically with regard to the map that you just put out. But at one point, I think I saw that the proposal involves out of the 6,000 square feet, 2,000 to be
walking track.
But I'm sorry, what?
The asphalt scooter walking
asphalt track. Yeah. And I couldn't help but sort of cringe when I heard that, because I think we can all agree that our city is not in need of more asphalt, that we have way too many areas where the heat off the concrete and the sidewalks and the streets is kind of overwhelming. Are there thoughts about ways to incorporate other materials other than, say, like if say in that one area with the trail you want to put like a different material that maybe is less heat absorbent than something like asphalt, to encourage people to utilize, because asphalt has its own set of problems too, not to mention the chemicals and all that. But I did also just want to acknowledge, I appreciate the printout that you included regarding all the materials that have been found in the earth there. I think, from an environmental standpoint, we try not to think about those kinds of things when kids are nearby, but I think it's extremely important and valuable information to share. So I guess my question is more, is there some thought about looking at other materials instead of asphalt?
So the conceptual drawing, if we did that as it's printed today, the estimate I've gotten is $750,000 to do that work. So that's that. I would say we are not going to do that project to that level. The asphalt is not going to be included at all. We are literally looking at trying to level and then put some type of synthetic type of material over the entire space to a large degree, so that we can just create that safe play space in that area completely. So the asphalt is not even a part of the plan anymore.
Thank you.
And that's why we've cut back considerably on what the cost would be, and that we know that that's not practical to do. We really need an open safe ground is what we need.
Mary and Nathan.
Okay, so I was going to ask, along with Alana's question in regards to the list of elements that were in the soil. I really didn't know if that was, what was that saying? Was it good or bad? I just didn't understand it. And if it's bad, how are you going to ameliorate that? And then I have a couple of other questions that precipitate from that. So.
Yep. So pretty much right now what's happening is things are being pushed up through the surface. It's long history of it just comes up to the top. So we will need to come in, probably take a foot of everything out and bring in new soil, and then do whatever we're going to do on top of it. So we are not thinking this is just as simple as just grade it and cover it, because that's not going to solve our problem. We literally will have to remove some of what's there, because there's no way to clean it or make it safe by not removing and replacing.
Okay. All right. The other thing I noticed, it referred to this as, said something about we're just going to change the green space. When I go by there, it doesn't look too green, so I wasn't really quite sure. And in your pictures, I didn't see any trees. So you're not, are you taking down trees? Are you putting up trees? There's a landscaper involved in this. So I figure maybe there is a landscape plan. I don't know about a pollinator garden. I saw that on there. I don't know if that's the best idea with kids, and I saw the rain garden, which again, you just said it's going to be flattened. So can you just kind of summarize any of that?
So depending on really what we think we can do, we may put a couple of smaller trees back in that area, but it's actually behind the building. So you wouldn't see the green driving by. You would need to get out of your car and walk to the back side of the building to see it, just so that you know where the green space is. And there is some shade that comes from the building, but we may have to address a couple of trees or bushes along the side. But there aren't trees there currently at all. And to your point about, pollination and stuff, part of it is we've got to be careful about what we do because of allergies and everything that children have. So it's like making those choices. We are starting to work with the Hitchcock Center. They've been on site for the last year doing some programming with us. So there's some discussion about, could the Hitchcock Center help us create some environmental types of things that could be in that area and have the kids help create and put them in play so they can appreciate them too. So there's still some questions about that piece, and we would definitely lean towards, would a landscaper recommend we put any trees there, and what kind of space are we going to lose if we put a tree? So it would be a longer conversation about what would be appropriate for shading.
Thank you. And can I ask just one other question? In the supporting documents, there's a letter from the Boys and Girls Club, but it kind of looks like a very legal thing. And I wasn't really, what's the, that was raised by somebody else about what is that? A declaration of restrictive covenant.
Oh, we were asked when we presented last year, we were asked, would we be willing to do something like that? Because we would have to restrict what happened. And we said we would happily do that. So that's how come that's just listed in there. That's just an example of something that we would have to put in place that we agreed to, that was requested last year. I think if we were to get funding, would be willing to do something like that. And that was actually sent to you, so I may have been included in the packet inadvertently.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Nathan?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I was curious about one little detail in the application, or I guess it's one of, so in the application, it's the second part that says budget. So there's the project narrative, the first part, and then there's the budget section. So I don't really know the mechanisms of how CPA budgeting works, but of the $200,000 you asked for, $195,000 is for the actual hard costs, and $5,000 of that is for the Y personnel. CEO, property committee chair, and facility manager will provide project oversight. So I guess what I want to just ask is, it just doesn't. Since the people listed here, I take they're already existing staff members of the Y rather than being hired specifically for this project. It seems a little bit unusual, even if 5,000 is a relatively small amount, to be asking for funding for existing staff members to do this project. I don't know if that's a common practice or not. So I was just wanting to bring that up.
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, typically we've included something like that because there is time that's going to have to be given, which might mean somebody else has to cover something else they're doing. My property person right now actually only works 10 hours a week. So if I needed him to be the person, I would definitely be adding hours to him giving any kind of oversight to that. The property chair doesn't get paid at all. So that's not any of his time at all. And it may be more the time we're going to spend working with whoever the landscaper is, going out to bid, putting the project in place, and the time that we're going to put towards that work. But really the real dollars are going to go right into the ground and right into the work, to be perfectly clear. The extra, that we've estimated it'll probably be about $250,000 if we put a synthetic surface there with what we have. If we do sod, it'll be less, but we also know that sod's not going to hold up. So the Y's ready to put some money towards this project too.
Yeah, I have so many questions about this project, particularly because because we've seen it, before, but I feel like as the project has shifted, the application doesn't necessarily represent the shifts. So I don't understand from this application what we're building.
And
I don't understand what materials it's going to be. And I don't think the conceptual drawings match what I'm hearing.
They don't. We are looking to level the surface and put in a surface that is going to be multi-usable and able to be used year round and can hold up for years versus needing constant care. So it is very different than the conceptual drawing. I never had a new concept drawing done. I did not go back to an architect and ask an architect to do a second drawing.
It may just be that I'm a visual person, but all I'm imagining is it's $200,000 for a huge flat piece of rubber. And is that what this is?
It could look like that possibly, but we haven't figured out what surface is the appropriate surface at this point in time. Supplies keep changing, and even what's available to us continues to change too.
Okay. And the other piece is the only, going back to Nathan's point around the budget information. So I see you have the invoice from Kane Landscaping for the total amount for the project, which was $750,000.
That was from Mountain View.
Or sorry.
That's
right,
okay.
my apologies.
That's okay.
And I see pieces named underneath it, but none of them are itemized out. So it's hard to know what pieces cost what amounts. And especially as the scope is shifting, it's just difficult to know exactly. Like, I would love to see a real quote that shows, like, for $195,000, this is exactly how much prep would cost. This is how much it would cost to, like, down to how much will it cost to remove dirt? How much will it cost to add that new dirt? And from where is that dirt coming?
Right.
How much will it cost for the poured surface? How much will it cost in design services? Because if you're not using the concept drawings that's there, some of it, I think we'll just have to go towards design work, I'm guessing.
I'm hoping not much. I did not ask Mountain View to price it out because when they came back with $750,000, we said we need to reevaluate what we could do versus what the concept was 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. Well, I think the concept from, the last 2 rounds
Feel free, but
was really to create a toddler play space. And I think
that's a piece of it, yes.
And there was a playground built through Kaboom. So, like, that part of it sort of exists currently.
Not the toddler piece, because when we built the playground, we built it for age 3 and up, not for ages under 3. So we need to create the under 3 play area.
Okay. I feel like I need a budget that's a real budget, like, just to better understand it. Like, really, is it even possible for $200,000 to do regrading, to do bringing in more soil? Or maybe you don't need to bring in new soil if you're really pouring something totally over the whole surface. And then also a playground, but what playground design, and can it all be done for that amount of money? And I know, and I guess it's not exactly all for that amount of money either. No, because on the first page it says that the CPA request as percent of the total budget is 50,000, and the total budget's 400,000.
It's depending on the type of surface, and I think we have backed down what we would even put out there at this point in time. we continue to have to look at what's the appropriate thing for the expense that's going to go with it. And right now, with supplies as high as they are, we're going, will they come down? We don't know that right now. We can estimate it each day and it changes, but I'm happy to try to put together a budget that gives you a little bit more detail if that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, well, and also an invoice, because invoices they lock in prices, right? Like you can get an invoice, and as part of that, you can lock in a price for a certain number of days or for months. So I think that also might make you feel like you have more assurance that you really do know how much something is going to cost once you have an invoice in hand or a quote in hand saying this is how much it's going to cost for the next 6 months or the next 90 days, however much that is. I see Helene's hand.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation and answering all the questions.
Okay.
What I wanted to just ask, like I have a specific question, but it's sort of within the context of one of the pieces that, CPA, I think, takes seriously, which is one of our main goals is to provide support and resources to projects that serve, as much of the community as possible. And I think we've, raised this before. I know that in the past, I don't know all the details. I wasn't on the CPC at the time. We have provided funding for parks that are, and playgrounds that are, run by nonprofits that are part of, so I know that has been done before. And I think that as a committee, we need to think about kind of what that means, because the Y definitely serves kids in Holyoke and is, an amazing organization. But compared to like a public park, right, there's going to be limitations, and sort of thinking through, where we stand with that, and then where we also stand just going forward, where if we get other proposals from nonprofit organizations that have their own programming that, aren't completely open to the public. So those are sort of the things that I'm thinking about. And I honestly, I'm not sure what I think, but they're just things that I'm thinking about and weighing. But I guess my specific question in that context is, you mentioned that the goal would be for that space to be available till dusk. And I'm just wondering like how exactly that would work because I think last year there was some discussion of, when like there were licensing issues, that when the after school program was using it, it wouldn't necessarily be open to the public for other families to come by. Obviously, there's a good portion of the year where dusk is really early. So just sort of what what the thought is about having the community and come and use the space. If the community already uses the other space that you had the playground put in, how that works. If there's any like kind of logistical legal issues around insurance and, again, like our parks, the public parks are kind of use at your own risk. Like that's that's what it is. But a private organization, it's going to be a little bit different. So just really thinking about the logistics of making this as accessible to the community as possible, and those things I raised. That's, I guess, what I'd like to hear a little bit more about.
So, that you are spot on when we talk about licensed programs. Unfortunately, we can't share the space with the general public. So we would have to post what hours we could guarantee we weren't going to be using the facility. Usually by 5:15, we're done with the use of that facility. So 5:15 on every night would be open. Weekends would be open entirely because we don't run licensed program on the weekend. During the school year, there would be some more hours maybe during the day between when our preschool is out in that area that we could say it's open, but there would be limitations. And, I want to be very clear, for us, we want it to be as open as possible, but we don't necessarily control the rules of the state in childcare. So yeah, and those are the, you know, that's just going to affect availability of the space. And we've had people out there playing, you know, they've been in there mornings, afternoons. It really depends on whether we're using the space. But like if there's no school, if we're not running the program, then it would be open for the full day. For instance, this past holiday, we weren't open for our program, so full day would have been available for use.
Israel Rivera, I see your hand.
So thank you. I can't really speak much on it because I don't think I can actually vote on this because my wife is on the board. But I think the one thing I would ask to bring to the table too as well is some statistics on the demographics that you're serving throughout the day and with your programming that the kids will be able to use the park. Like how many of those kids would be Holyoke kids or kids from within the community that are being serviced that are going to be able to actually take advantage of the park? That's something I think that the Boys and Girls Club utilized as leverage to be able to say that this is not only going to be open to the community, but it's open to the community which we serve, which is still the community of Holyoke and the people within the city of Holyoke. But I guess that's my only little 2 cents.
And Israel, just to that point, I would say within the youth that we serve in our after-school childcare, we're probably looking at least 90% are low-income individuals who reflect this community very well, and probably a higher demographic of what it would be when you look at residents and the percentage of residents that are Latino, especially. Our after school program and our summer program is truly serving the low income families. And those are the people who are here every day. So it absolutely reflects in our programs and our participants, that reflects the community very strongly. And it's a good question to bring up.
Yeah, I just want to mention that when we had this conversation with the Boys and Girls Club, that must have been 5 years ago, what we did was we put in place a 5-year restrictive covenant, which was the document that they included here as an example of what they would be willing to do, which specifies exactly which hours it's open to the general public, and also just names that it has to be open to the public, during certain hours, as part of it being, having, benefit to the city and access to the public.
So would the Y be willing to do that?
Yes.
That's why they included the example of the one that we had created with the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club in our application.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Okay, any remaining questions?
Is there going to be a new playscape? In other words, there is a Kaboom playscape, but is there going to be a new one for toddlers?
I'm still trying to figure out what the toddler, what they would want in that space. Currently, they are asking really for not necessarily a climbing apparatus, but we would have to price out what that climbing apparatus would be and what size it would be, because it would be very different than what's on the first side. They're really looking more for sandboxes and things along those lines. So it's more sensory related activities in that space.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So may I ask the chair, Megan, can we ask for, an additional information, including, like you said, a breakout of exactly what things were going to be on what we're spending the money on exactly?
Yeah.
Is that appropriate at this point, Megan?
Yeah, I think like other applicants, we've said, hey, we need a letter on the following, right? Or,
Right.
Please send this along. As soon as we have it, we'll send it to the entire, committee. I will say the only tricky part is that folks are going to start going into the scoring. Lincoln is starting to score projects. So just the sooner you can get us the information, the better. Because I think people really do want to support the Y. Like, I really want to support the Y Playground. Like, this is the third year you're coming to us, and I was hoping like this was the year. But I feel like without more detail, it's hard to vote for the project. So it's just we want it.
Well, that's nice to hear. I mean, we can see what we can work up as far as pricing and give you an idea of estimates that we know that we have. We will have to go out to bid, so even getting an estimate from a company is not going to necessarily lock things in. As other people, we usually want to try to get at least 3 bids in hand on what we're going to do once we've decided on the details. So yes.
Okay.
And I will say, like, from my perspective, any funding is going to be valuable to us. It's, that's going to make a difference on what steps we can take, or what choices we take along the way in doing this area, because we really need to redo this area this spring.
All right. Is there anyone else that wants to speak in support of the project or with a question, either from the committee or the public? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kathy. Really appreciate you coming and your presentation, and looking forward to more information coming down the pipeline.
Okay, thank you, Megan. If you guys, I am going on vacation in a day, so I can't get you the information till early February. So hopefully that works for you on your end.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for hearing our presentation and giving it serious consideration. Always appreciated. And as I said at the beginning, I know this is really not an easy job. I appreciate what you're all doing. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks. Nathan, did you have a question?
Oh no, I just say goodbye to her.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So I think, we've asked a number of applicants for some additional information. And so I think what I would like to do is, I don't know if anyone has started scoring any projects yet. The scoring link is, by the way, up on the internal page. So if folks are looking for it, it is there. It's called find the name of it. The CPC scoring survey is the name of it, just so you know. And I think maybe it makes sense for us to, we know that we're waiting for more information from the City Hall basement project, the documents. And we're waiting on more information from the YMCA project.
And also, I think from the Parks and Rec Jones Point.
Yes, we need a letter from the mayor for the city projects that we're missing letters for. So we need one from the Jones Point Park master plan. Amy sent that to them today. Tom, did you want to jump in on that? Oh, you're muted. I'm so sorry. Can you unmute?
Yeah, that's signed and delivered.
Oh, awesome. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we received that. Thank you.
No, but I think tonight we asked Tom also for something, didn't we?
For communication from Chris Baker concerning the concerns about the sewage overflow and other environmental concerns in the area, and if additional testing was required as part of the master plan.
Yep.
Yes, you're right, Mary. Good catch.
So what should we do then? We should not score until we have that stuff.
Yeah, I would hold off on scoring those for another week or two, or waiting for more information to come in, if you can. If you can't, you can't.
And then will we meet again before we'll start scoring, or should we?
No, but what I think does make sense is if anything comes out of that communication, for example, with Chris Baker, we'll ask Tom Reynolds and Chris Baker to come to the start of our next meeting, right? If anything, comes out from the YMCA application, then that where we really want to follow up, And anyone can indicate that to me with an email saying, hey, actually, I really do have some questions. Can we bring them back in? We could always bring an applicant back in. We've done that in the past. When someone just felt like there was something unresolved that really needed to be just addressed. You can always send me an email and say, hey, can we add this person to the next agenda? And we'll reach out to them. But typically what we've done is any follow-up with applicants, and then we roll right into, let's discuss projects. So we'll pull up the scoring guide and we'll be able to see how did everyone score. We'll start with the projects that scored the highest, and then we'll go from there. We're in a unique position this year in that because of the modified asks and the fact that we don't have housing projects, we don't have more asks than funding. We could fund every project that's come forward to us if we want to. We don't have to, right? We can always say, we know there are big things coming, and we do, right? Like Jones Point Park is going to come out as a master plan, and then there'll be phases to do. We know that Scott's Tower is going to come back to us as it comes into phase 3, right? Like we know there are big things coming. The Pulaski Park piece around looking at the wall's going to come to us. I don't know when. Is it going to be next year? Is it going to be in 3 years, right? But eventually the Pulaski Park study will translate into a project that costs money. So we can always choose to reserve funding, right? And then have it when we need it for larger projects in the future. So that's something that we should keep in mind too, just around as a committee, making sure that we're balancing kind of responding to the projects in front of us that we feel like are the right projects, they score high, they have their benefit to the city, they're feasible, they're realistic, they're ready to go, versus let's hold money back so that we can be ready for the next project that has a larger ask. So keep that in mind as you're scoring projects. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering, with all of these, well, when is our next meeting? Because that would be, or when is the scoring supposed to be done by? What date? Because
it just has to be done by the meeting.
And will the meeting be after the administrator from the Y returns from vacation and gives the information to us? I mean, I think that's kind of a ways off, right? And
my personal feeling is that this was the presentations.
Oh, okay.
This is when information was due. It was today. We can take in anything under advisement if we choose to as a committee. If someone sends more information afterwards and we choose to review it, we can. Okay. But this was the presentation day, right? Okay. Applications were due, but everything was due today.
Okay.
In fact, it was due.
And to be honest, like you've been making, I mean, not just you, Amy, other people I'm sure have also been reaching out. It's frustrating when you see things kind of clearly from our perspective. It's like, what are you doing? Just get it all together and, put it in a presentation. But, it seems somewhat clear that some folks are better at organizing this kind of material. I wish all nonprofits could have a grant writer, so therefore we know the people who need to, look into this kind of funding are qualified to do the writing for it, because it's really tough. It's tough doing this stuff. Yeah.
And we can still score a project as it is and roll into that meeting, start having our conversations, pull an applicant back in, right? We don't have to send anything to City Council in February. We don't, right? We have at least 2 or 3 meetings to get our ducks in a row in terms of who we want to put forward to City Council for our recommendations for funding, and why not, right? And just because we might initially score a project a certain way, if we want to choose to take them under consideration, given new information that comes forward, that's okay too. Project could score lower, right? And still be considered, right? If new information was then shared with the committee. That's up to the committee to decide.
I don't think there was an end time on the agenda, but I just want to remind everybody it's almost 8:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to go and deal with childcare relief.
Don't we all? Let's end the meeting.
Okay, wait, though. I just want to say one thing. There is no place on the website for the public to weigh in. There was a way of scoring last year, but I don't see any scoring method. So
we'll get the public survey out on the website, and we'll also send it to the mayor's office.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, folks. So our next meeting, let's just quickly name that. Okay. So we had attempted to change to Mondays, but it did not seem to be better than Wednesdays, our original date. So I'll throw it back out to the committee in terms of when we want to return. We were doing the Wednesdays, but we've been sticking with Mondays other than for the presentations, which always seem to be hitting a holiday, right? And where we were. So if we go back to Mondays, then our meeting would be on the 14th, or were we doing the third Tuesday? Someone remind me.
I think it has to be the third Monday if you're talking Monday.
Oh, the third Monday, yeah.
So
it'll
the
be the 20th.
The second Monday.
The third Monday, this
That's a
falls on
holiday.
school vacation. Yeah, and it's a holiday. I'll be in Florida.
That whole week would be
Yeah.
technically out.
Yeah,
for
so
some
City
people, but
Hall is closed, I believe, on 20th.
on the 20th, yeah.
So the
What about the
27th.
third? What about the
27th?
third? Oh,
Fine with me, I think.
So we could do the 13th, or we could do the 27th.
Seems like the 27th, because then there won't be this. By then, we should have everything else that's needed, right?
Okay.
And if we don't, we don't. So.
All right. So CPC on the 27th at 6 o'clock.
So did you say, Meg, that it's going to be on Mondays from now on, and probably the third Monday of each month after this, after February?
That's where we had been, but
Oh.
I think we're running also into, there's lots of holidays that fall on Mondays.
Okay, so that is the plan for after this meeting, as
Yeah.
far as, you know, okay.
All right.
I
Thank
think
you all.
the third Wednesdays, I think, well, now it's going to be a Tuesday. Never mind. There's also like committees through the school district that are important for people to be part of, but I can check in maybe directly with Amy and Meg if that seems like an issue. So.
Okay, that sounds good. I know all of you are busy, wonderful people doing lots for the city. So, the schedules are always the schedules. Never easy.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Bye.
thank you. A motion to adjourn.